So Canelo Crawford, a super fight. We've been waiting for a while for this one, and it's finally here. I think the whole world's talking about it, but is it really going to be the fight that we expect it to be? Is it going to live up to the hype? And is the Netflix money going to look like it's been spent well? I'm not sure. I think there's two ways this could play out, and the most likely is that two aging fighters, outstanding fighters, though they may be, are going to meet in the middle of the ring and give that much respect to each other and have that much to lose, that the event itself ends up being a little bit more of a patience match, a chess match, one where the fine details really matter, but the vast majority of the world, perhaps looking for a slugfest, they're not going to necessarily see what they want to see. There's going to be a lot of casual fans watching it, as well as a lot of hardcore boxing fans, because these two are amazing fighters, two generational greats. They're first ballot Hall of Famers, and I don't think anyone would dispute that. But my fear is that Crawford is going to head up to 168, and most of the things that have made him great are going to be diminished. His speed, his fast twitch fibres, they're going to be affected by the bulk he's put on. He's not had time to develop as a fighter at 168 either, and that's a big concern for me, because whilst Canelo has been at 168 now for 3-4 years as a super middleweight, Terence Crawford really is a career welterweight. He's not a career welterweight. He's gone from lightweight through to welterweight, but that's the territory that he's dominated in. He moved up to 154 light middleweight to fight Israel Madrimov, and he struggled. He struggled to really make a dent in Madrimov that evening. I don't read as much into that as other people do. It was his first fight at 154. More than that, Madrimov is an outstanding boxer. Real strong amateur pedigree, has the ability to evade his opponents with outstanding footwork, really fleet of foot, has that kind of ex-Soviet sort of style, that pendulum style, in and out, a little bit like Bivol did against Canelo, and he was very elusive. I still thought Crawford won the fight, so I actually think it was a good win. It was a good performance in retrospect when you consider all of that. But most people look at that fight and think, well, if he stepped up to 154 and he's not been able to put a dent in Madrimov, how on earth is he going to step up two more weight categories to 168 super middleweight and beat a guy like Canelo, who is so well seasoned, so experienced? Technically, he's an outstanding fighter in the pocket. He loves meeting in the middle of the ring and dominating that space, both mentally and with his footwork, with his details, with his feints. He's a highly adept technical fighter when it comes to close combat in the middle of the ring, and that's where Crawford's going to find him. Crawford's not going to be able to draw him in to go for a walk around the ring, to use footwork that means that Canelo's going to have to chase him around the ring. I don't think Crawford's ever fought like that. His mentality doesn't suggest that he's ever going to fight like that, and he's diminished in terms of his physical capabilities, his footwork, his how fleet he is of foot. So I think he's going to struggle to evade, or not necessarily evade Canelo, but I think he's going to struggle to do anything other than meet him in the middle of the ring. So I see this being a game of chess. What could the major factors be that could turn it one way or the other for either fighter? Well, Canelo's power, without a doubt, is something that everyone's asking, can Crawford take that at 168? The smaller man, he's stepping up. Okay, he's got new weight on his body, but it is new weight. It's not seasoned weight. He's not been operating at that level for years. He's certainly not had any fights either at middleweight or at super middleweight. So we don't really know how he's going to be able to deal with the power. Who's the most powerful puncher he's been in with? You'd have thought probably Spence, although I think most people accept that whilst that was an outstanding performance, probably the performance that I can remember in the last 10 years has really made me stand up and realise how great a fighter is. That's how good Crawford was against Spence, regardless of how diminished Spence was. But Spence can throw. Spence was a heavy-handed 147 fighter. But there's a big difference between, again, welterweight and super middleweight, 147 pounds, 168 pounds. So can Crawford take a shot from Canelo? Because he's going to have to. the 12 rounds of boxing, Canelo will get to him at some stage. So that's for me is the biggest factor. It's in Canelo's favour, certainly when it comes to the factors inside the ring. When it comes to Crawford, the way I think he could win this fight is potentially with his punch variation and his timing. It's not going to be, in my opinion, about speed as much, because I feel like speed has been diminished by that move up in weight. I can't see him having lightning speed that's going to be a differentiator, but I can see him throwing shots from different angles with volume and with timing that can hurt Canelo. If you hit Canelo straight on, his chin is one of the best in the business. There's a famous punch that Golovkin landed in the first Canelo-Golovkin fight, and Canelo didn't blink. In the same way that the same fight, during the same fight, a similarly famous punch landed on Golovkin's chin, and he didn't blink either. Those two have got unbelievable chins, and Canelo's, if you hit Canelo with an orthodox punch, let's say a right cross or a left hook, those kind of punches are not necessarily going to do anything to Canelo if they land on his chin. However, Crawford has this ability to throw screw shots from the side, so almost kind of turning a hook, a cross between a backhand and a hook, and landing on the top of the head around the temple area. And when he does that, I think that could well ask questions of Canelo's conditioning, of Canelo's capability to take a punch as he gets older. But it's a different kind of impact. It's the kind of impact that can scramble your senses. And if there's one thing about Crawford we know, it's that if he has a fighter hurt, or he senses that they have a moment where their senses are scrambled and they're not in a good enough position to be able to defend themselves, he's a very, very, very strong finisher. When he senses blood, he's very accurate puncher. He throws, his punch variation is, I think he's got more in his armour and his locker than Canelo has. And if he lands one of those kind of screwy shots just around the side and over the top, on the top of the head, that could well be an opening that he could create as the fight goes on. But my prediction for the fight, well, as I mentioned before, that the fact that Canelo is in a position of, let's say, it's not just about his attributes within the ring, it's also about his attributes and his stance, his standing in the sport outside the ring. It's hard to get a decision against Canelo in Vegas. Mexican Independence weekend, the judges, I think, have been handpicked for Canelo. I think everything is against Crawford, and Crawford needs to win this fight either by stopping Canelo or by winning very, very clearly on the cards. I'm talking about winning at least 8 or 9 rounds. If it's a close 6-6, 5-7-5, that kind of territory, there's no way that Crawford's going to get the decision. I think he needs to put distance between him and Canelo. Can he do that? I'm not sure, but I do think that the way for him to do that could well be for him to start to dominate. I don't see him stopping Canelo, but I think what I referred to before in terms of the ability for him to maybe scramble his senses and to start to dominate, I can't see him stopping him in those moments, even though he's a very good finisher. But I think those moments of dominance can put distance between him and Canelo. So I do think he can win this fight, but all of the factors are stacked against him. So my prediction for the fight is, I actually see a draw. I think Crawford will be the better fighter over the fight. I think it'll go the distance, and I can see him winning 8-4, 7-5, that kind of territory. And the cards, in my opinion, the way I view the fight, and the way that maybe the majority of boxing fans would view the fight. But I can see Canelo being saved by, let's say a majority draw, that kind of decision, because there's a lot of money in this fight, and it wouldn't surprise me if they add intrigue to this. There's nowhere for either of these fighters to go in the future, so I could also see that neither of them would be that displeased if they had the opportunity to run it back again. So I'm going to go for a draw. Which is a pretty high tariff pick, but I cannot see this fight being a shootout and a showdown that is going to entertain the world. And my probably a more confident prediction for the fight is that there's going to be a lot of fans and maybe some executives at Netflix who are wondering whether or not it was worth all of the effort to go to for this fight, because whilst they're two incredible fighters, there's too much to lose. They're too highly skilled, and the physical attributes that they've both had diminish over the years suggest that it cannot be an all-action fight. The low punch output that they both deploy throughout their careers is in the 40s. The number of rounds that the number of punches they throw per round. All of these factors suggest that this is going to be a tight game of chess without as much entertainment as perhaps the world watching would like to see. I hope you enjoy it.